So in this particular part, what we have for you is a simple line drawing, and most everything is given except for the fact that edge is just uncalled for or uncalled, and therefore you just have to assume it lines up there. So this edge should vertically line up with this edge, which should line up with this one. Then we know it's 2 1/8 this way, so it's pretty much 2 1/8 this way. So to create it, there's one version of it. Let me draw another one. I actually started off with doing this little number. So the overall part is 4 1/2. 4 5, and then it has the edge of it coming out to 2 there, so I'll draw it at 2. And then of course there's the question of the angle line. So I'm going to rotate this one a -30 because this angle from here out rotated from this way 60, so therefore this one has to be 30, which means this one has to be 30. So I get that. And I know this edge just comes straight across, so I go over and hit it. And then it's off to the races with the other part. So I'm going to come down here, the value of 1/2. It's not showing my screen what is down below. The depth across is 1.25. These are back up, and then this distance is 1, and I'm going, well, hit the wrong button. This distance is 1, and I'm going to stop. Now, let me zoom in back just a hair. There's the 1/2. So why do I stop after this point in creating my part so far? I can mirror a couple different ways, can't I? So I'll do a little trim command, select this edge as my cutter, enter this edge as my cutee. I don't need this line. Well, actually I will need this line. Why will I need to keep this line in some form? Yeah, for your mirroring application, you need some kind of axis. So I'm going to delete this line. There's that edge. That also looks good. And then I do a quick mirror command. I'm going to mirror it about this line. Tell it no. There's that part of it. And then of course I mirror the whole thing. Here's a neat little trick on the mirror tool. You don't always have to have a line. If you're careful what you're doing. I know this midpoint right here of this 1 is the center of the part. So I click that point, come straight down with my polar on. Hit the second point, and then hit no, and there's most of my part. Now, neat little trick, I'll go ahead and just make this box out in space, and it is 2.125 wide and 1.5 deep. There's the rectangle. All I have to do now is locate it from where it needs to be. So I'll just draw a line down from this edge. Actually, it'll be from the 1 1/2 is from the tip straight down. So I'm going to draw a line straight down from here. That is 1.5. And what does that line serve to do for me? Align my edge, and it creates a what right here for me? Not a mirror. What is this little point going to allow me to do? Do what? You're going to be able to click on it, for sure. But what tool do I need to use? What tool allows me to move this nice box from where it is? Move. Yeah, now I can use copy too, but move command, select my grab point, select my placement point, and I can delete the line. So that, just drawing that little construction line right there, all I needed to do is be there for me to hit a locating point, and then I get to delete it. Then of course I can do another mirror about the center point of this part, hit those 2 edges, tell it no once more, and then there's my part made. So with a little bit of kind of forethought and planning, you can actually reduce your design time on something like this pretty fast. Now, here's the next challenge. When you have it created, and if you don't have it fully created yet, that's okay. You can work with what you have done so far. You don't have to finish it out. But your next challenge is, I want you to switch to one of the layout tabs and set this thing up for printing. Set it up for a PDF. So you're going to go to the layout tab. You're going to use your page setup to set to PDF, and you're going to try to get this thing scaled 1:1 on that sheet. Go ahead and do that now. Alright, so to kind of continue on, I've got this drawing and I want to go in and save it as a, I'm just going to make a quick new layout here. I'm going to add it to a new layout in this case. So I choose one of my tabs down below, layout 1, whatever you have set up is fine. But I go there, and again we kind of refer to this as paper space. And one of the first things that I have to do when I get here is to establish what size paper, what size printer, or what type printer, those kind of things. So you all tell me, where's the first place I go to kind of start setting things up? Where do I go? Page setup. Now there's a bunch of ways to find that. You can go up to the big A and hit pull down and then go to your print settings and go to page setup. You can go down here, which is my quick and fast version. I just right click on the tab, because right clicks always give you options, right? That's what right clicks do. So I go down to the tab itself and say, oh look, there it is, page setup manager. And then of course I want to modify this particular page. So I'm on the same layout that I selected. I hit modify and I choose 4 major things. First thing I need to choose is the printer, right? So what kind of printer do we want to use? What PDF? We want to output a PDF blueprint, right? That's our goal. And it's very, very common to have PDF blueprints. So I choose DWG to PDF as my printer, which means it's going to pop out a PDF file. I choose my paper size, which is this 8.5 by 11. Whether you choose full bleed or not, doesn't really matter. Full bleed just means it goes right to the edges of the paper. So there's your printer. This is your paper size. Your plot scale is 1:1. And then, of course, we choose this monochrome up here for what purpose? Why do we choose monochrome?
Black and white.
Black and white. Exactly. So I hit OK, and I'll watch carefully. My sheet has now changed a little bit. It's got a lot of margin space. It's got plenty of margin space, probably a little bit too much margin space. So I probably wouldn't actually choose this if I wanted to do this for a real print, because I would like to use some of that extra space. This is just way too large of margins. Most printers can go a lot closer to the edge than this, but it's okay for right now. Now, I now have my paper set up, but how do I show my part in this on this sheet? What's this box right here called? What's that referred to as? Hard to see because it's in green. Let me change the layer color real fast. Once again, I'll change it back to white, or technically this. What's this line? What's this line right here for? This box, what's it represent? In layman's terms? That's the viewport. That's what allows you to see into model space where you draw your stuff. It's a window. If I delete the window, I can't see any of my drawings. So I don't want to do that. Anyway, now you all tell me, I see all these drawings here that I've done over different examples. How am I going to find my part? What's my technique?
Zoom in.
I can zoom in, but how do I activate the viewport to zoom in? Double click inside it, it becomes bold, and now I go hunting for my part. There it is, right there. Now I zoom in. Now, by the way, what's the negative side for me actually doing this little activating the viewport trick? And by the way, to get out of it, you just double click outside it to get out of it. But what's the negative side of me doing that? What's the drawback? Yeah? Keep thinking, think about most blueprints. You're always going to have scale, right? You have to have scale of 1 to 2 or 1 to 4, whatever the case may be. All right? Now, what does zooming around in an active viewport do to scale? Messes it up. So when you're done doing all your panning and zooming and finding your part, you need to deactivate and try not to activate it anymore, otherwise you're going to mess up your scale settings. By the way, how do I now set my viewport to a specified scale? How do I do it? In the bottom, but the bottom little feature doesn't show up until I do what? I got to click on the edge of the viewport, see how its grips are showing. Now I've got a little tool that pops up down here and says, okay, you can set to whatever scale you want. 1 to 1 looks good to me. Okay? So now that I've done that, I have the right size paper, I have the part scaled to a 1 to 1 scale, and I can even grab these grips and kind of slide my viewport in a little bit closer. I can even select the viewport and click the move tool to kind of move it around on my sheet of paper, whatever the case may be. So with this in mind, what do I use to check to see how I'm doing so far? How can I see how this is going to look before it prints out? Preview. So I can go up to my tools up at the top, and I can choose plot preview. You can also see plot preview if you go to the A and hit print. But there it goes. And I realized one thing, first of all, what does every blueprint need to have in terms of information for people? It needs to have dimensions. We'll get to that in a second. How about just identification of the scale, who drew it, maybe even when it was drawn? Do what? Yeah, we could do we could basically draw in a little title block. For our purposes, we can just type the values in. So real quickly, why don't you go ahead and use your text command to add your name, let's say the class, or let's say the scale. How about you just name and scale? That would be sufficient for right now. Use your text command to add in name and scale down at the bottom right-hand corner, which is where usually title blocks are. But keep in mind, you got to control your text height. So let's say your text height is going to be 0.125. So text height of 0.125, and add your name and scale down to the bottom right of the print. So to add in text, I can use the text command pretty effectively. I can use mtext or regular text. Since I'm just going to type in just a few little things there, I'm just going to hit single line. And say I'm going to start right here. Text height of 1.25, no rotation, and then I just type in my name. Again, always capitalize. And we're going to say the scale is 1 to 1. Hit enter to complete, and place it down here on the bottom. Again, noting that yes, this kind of looks small compared to the rest of the drawing, but if this actually prints out, this is a nice, comfortable viewing size. There's no advantage of actually making this thing massive, because you're going to see it fine when it prints out into real paper. If I wanted to be a little fancy, I could turn around and add like a little title block down here, maybe use my move tool to move some of my text around a bit to create some lines. I mean, I could do all kinds of things to kind of dress this up and add more features in very quickly and easily to make it look like a little bit more professional. But for the most part, it's pretty easy to add stuff like that in. Now, with that in mind, my next question to you all is, let's take a look at my preview, and I look at it and I'm like, you know what, I don't really like this box outline right here. What can I do about that box outline? Well, I can't delete it, because if you delete it, it goes away. The whole viewport goes away. Can't trim it, because of the same reason. You can't get rid of the viewport edge. But what can you do? Not layout. Think of layers. What can you use with your layers to make this viewport not appear anymore?
Can you turn them off?
Yeah, you can basically set this particular feature to a layer that doesn't print. Watch this. I go in, I hit create a new layer, and I have one right here. It's called con. Def points will also work for this. These are layers, or def points is a layer that's non-printing. I created con, and I set it to be non-printing because I have that little mark out right there. I can turn that off and on. It just means that anything you draw with this layer just won't print. It'll exist, it just won't show up in a print. And so with that layer in mind, all I have to do now is select my viewport and switch it from the layer that it's currently on, which is 0, to the con or def points layer to make it not print anymore. To double check, I'll hit the plot preview again, and no viewport. You know, does the viewport kill us? No. Could you have it on there and be okay? Yeah. It just looks a little bit cleaner and less confusing if you don't have a viewport showing. So that's a handy little trick. Alright, see what you can do to kind of clean that up just a little bit more, and then we're going to go on, and I want you to add dimensions. Now you might need to create a dimension style for this if you don't already have one set up. And I'll give you a little tip. Go ahead and set your arrows and your text height and all those settings to 0.1 for this example, and your dimensions will look pretty good. Go ahead and do that now. Sure. Do layer again. Alright, so I go to my layers tool and I go to my layers property manager. That's that little box at the top left of the layers panel. See it right there? Okay. You click it, it pops up here. Then you just hit your new button to create a layer. You can call it whatever you want it to be called. You can color it whatever you want it to be colored. You can even call it non-print. I might even change the color to red. All that matters, and most importantly, is that this little icon right here is clicked on, so there's like a little tiny red slash, and that layer, whatever's created on that layer, is no longer printable. And then I'm done with this window. I'm finished. I've got a layer, it's got a name, it's got a color, it's non-printing. Does it matter what the line type is? No, because again, it's not printing. So I close it out. The only challenge is, even though you created that layer, this viewport is not on that layer. So how do I set this particular feature to be on that layer? How do you do that? How do you switch anything to different layers? You click on it, then you use your layer pull down right here and just pull down and select the layer you want it to be on. Since it's selected, you can tell it's selected because you see the grips, you see the outline. Now I just select it to, let's say if I choose layer 1, it absorbs the properties of layer 1. Def points, hidden, but I'm choosing the non-print because I just set it to be a non-printing layer. I hit escape and it's set to go. The viewport itself won't print, but the image inside it still will. Okay? Alright, now go add you some dimensions and we'll move on from there. Again, set your dimensions to be, most of your dimension settings to be like 0.1 text height, 0.1 arrow size, 0.1 offsets, those kind of things, and that'll look pretty good. Yeah. Alright, so real quickly I'll just go run through the whole dimension creation process. Again, it's handy if you already have one of these dimension styles set up, but it's easy to make on the fly. We're going to go to find our dimension tools, which are typically on the annotate section, and we find our dimensions panel. Again, mine's just compressed. But the tool you're looking for to get started, the tool that you need to go start setting your dimension styles, is not clearly visible on this panel. It's this little extra little arrowhead down here at the bottom right, which is like your manager feature. So I click it. It says, hey, what kind of style you want to do? And I'm just going ahead, I could either use one I've already done, or let's start with a new one. So I may create a new one, and I just call it Eric's 2. And this style is going to have settings. One of the things that I'll go through and I'll change is everything to be by layer. So by layer, by layer, by layer, by layer, by layer. That allows me to have better control of all this stuff. My symbols and arrows. I like that arrow type. I could change it to whatever I want, but I like that type. Arrow size, 0.1 is good for our exercise. What's the bare minimum size that I would want to set this to, you think? What's that magic number we mentioned before? It always shows up good on a set of plans. 0.08. Yep. Just a hair under what we're doing right now. That's specifically important when you're talking with your text. So I choose my text style, standard's fine, by layer, no fill color unless you want your text to totally not show up, and 0.1 for this application. The arrows are 0.1. These center marks, which we're not using, by the way, the center mark is just that little thing right there. Break size, not a big deal. It's proportional. Sometimes it's just you gotta eyeball this stuff. Offset from dimension line, I might set that to 0.1. And I'm just going through these tabs and saying, 0.1 and choosing the settings that I want. Now, what happens if I want to keep, what if I wanted, now this one's important, what if I didn't want my dimensions to show up as decimal and I want them to be fractions? What if I want to give somebody fractions as their readout? What should I do right here on this primary unit section? Yeah, just change it from decimal to architectural. You can choose fractional, but architectural is a little bit better, at least shows the inches. Either one will technically work. I guess since we used a fraction, we better use a fractional on this one just to be perfect, perfectly aligned. Round off, don't have to worry about that. Precision 1/8, that just means where it kind of rounds off the decimal places too, even though it's not the decimals. Just rounds to the nearest fraction. And then alternate units, by the way, just in case you want to know what this is if you want to show both the primary set of units and the secondary. For example, if you wanted to show the American custom and you wanted to show metric, you would turn this on and it gives you two outputs of dimensions, which is sometimes handy. Anyway, I set up this Eric Style 2. I select Eric Style 2 to be the running dimension scheme, and then I just start dimensioning. So I'm going to go from here to here, pull it up to this side. That looks good. Pull it to here. That looks good. It's 1/2 from here. That's fine. Put a nice little 1/2 right here. Maybe a dimension of this from here to here. Maybe a height dimension from there to there. Maybe a dimension just overall, since they didn't really give it to us. We'll put it there. And I can go through and just keep on adding dimensions to make this thing nice and easy to make, and make it easy on everybody. And the fact that they didn't show us where this thing was located, I can add that in with no problem. Although that would be redundant, that last one I added, because I already know what this and this is. So the only thing I would probably need to do is show the angular value, which fortunately there is an angular version of dimensioning. So I click here, here, and there, and it tells me it is 30 degrees. Because I think I was supposed to do 60, so I think I might be actually off right now, because I think it was supposed to be 60 from there, not 30, so I might need to go and change my design, which is not a problem. That's easy to fix. But for right now, I'm going to actually keep going with this. Yep, I should have rotated only 30 to get the 60. But anyway, I can add the dimensions in. What would be bad if I started noticing that my dimensions were showing up like this? What if I clicked around and I noticed, that one dimension's red? Is that okay?
No, that's not okay.
That's not okay. But wait a minute, I got it set to monochrome. It'll print out in black and white. What's the warning sign here? It's not going to print because I've done what? Right, I accidentally drew on a layer that was a non-printing layer, and so I'm going to be in trouble. So I'll switch that back to like my 0 layer, whatever I'm going to do. That's why I changed the color on a non-printing layer, just so that you get that warning sign before it happens. And then, I can check it out, print preview. Looks pretty good. Then I turn around and hit print, and all it asks me is says, okay, where do you want to save your file? What do you want to call it? Here's test to print. I'll save it to my desktop screen. There it is, and then up pops my PDF viewer with my new part creation. Nice little blueprint with quick information done. Okay? Again, lots of settings, more settings than actually challenging parts, but those settings will get you over time. Questions? All right.